Hello, welcome to Soup to Nuts. I'm your host, Brian Iarussi. Tonight we got a special guest, which is a close friend of mine. His name is Dan Borelli. I'd like to welcome him to the show. Danny.
Thank you, Brian.
Glad to have you. Danny's going to explain to you what he's cooking. That's how we're going to start this segment. So here's Danny.
Tonight I'm going to make spaghetti carbonara, and what it basically is eggs and bacon over pasta. And I usually get pancetta to make the bacon part of it. What pancetta is, it's like a spicy Italian pork. It's got a lot of fat. And I get it, as you can see, I get it cut or sliced pretty thick, about 1/8 of an inch, and then cube it all. It gets pretty sticky, so you have to actually physically pull it all apart. And I start throwing in the pancetta when the pasta starts to boil, and the sauce takes about as long as water boils, right?
Yeah, the whole dish takes about 11 to 12 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Which is about a amount of time the pasta takes to cook once you get it boiling. Which we put it in ahead of time because it's easier that way.
How's the pasta doing?
Pretty well, Dan.
Okay.
I turned the burner on. You want it on?
Well,
Wait till you get
I'm going to get everything going first. Plus, we got a lot more to do.
All right.
You want to start yours?
Yeah, while Dan's doing that, I'm going to start my half. And what I'm making is veal cutlet parm. And the first thing we do, this is your veal, you get it cut. I get mine cut about 1/8 of an inch thick, and then I have it pounded out by the person that cuts it. And it happens to be at Waverly Market in Framingham, because their veal is, I think, the best, nice and fresh. That's also where Dan got the pancetta from, too. So the first step you do is to flour it, and you put it in the egg, and then the breadcrumb it. Put a little oil in a skillet, and you throw them right in. You got to be careful with these. You can't overcook them. You're only just going to brown them real quick and take them out. I just got a couple pieces that I haven't already pre-breaded. Like I said, you probably want the heat on medium. Let me just grab this last piece. So what you probably want to do also is buy, like I said, buy it at an Italian store. Don't have it's not going to be as good as you buy it in a supermarket because it's frozen and unfrozen, not fresh. This is fresh right from Boston, I think, where they get it, all their meat daily. So once you get those in there, you can brown them up. And Danny, I'm going to shoot back to him because he's just about ready to start the other one.
Okay. I'm still kind of dividing up all the pancetta. And as Brian said, I get my pancetta at the same place, the Waverly Market. And I think David is the guy. He's the main butcher.
Excuse me.
You just tell him that you're making carbonara, and he usually slices it very thick. It's all pretty sticky, and you want to break it up as much as possible so that it fries all the way through. Actually, I want to hook me up with some heat. Thanks, Brian. We're making 2 pounds of carbonara, so I'm using about 1 pound of pancetta.
So let me ask you, where'd you learn this dish, pretty much?
I learned it I learned it by failing many times. It's I always thought that the way it was cooked was that you would fry up the pork naturally, and then put the spaghetti in the pan and fry egg with the pork. But actually, it's all in reverse. I learned it when I was studying in Italy, in Rome. Some places in Boston that I've had it, they actually throw a lot of onions in it. They'll top it with onions or some other kind of fancy thing, but I like it pretty plain and simple.
So you want the burner pretty much on high once you get it all separated?
No, about medium.
All right, my veal's starting to, the heat's starting to get up now. It's starting to get a little brown. I'm actually, like I said, it only browns. Being that thick, it's probably going to brown a minute or two on either side, and then you're going to flip it over, brown the other side, take it off, and put it on a separate pan, in a separate dish. As you can see here, I already pre-breaded those. I'm going to cook them all up. And the last step I'm going to do is put them all in a roasting pan, cover them with sauce and cheese, and bake them in the oven for about another 5 minutes, just until the cheese melts and everything gets hot. Because you don't, like I said, you don't want to overcook veal because it gets very tough. This stuff being so fresh, I'll show you at the end of the show, you should be able to cut it with a fork. It's going to be so tender if I do it right, hopefully. I mean, I'm confident that I'll be able to do it right, Dan.
So how long do you cook it for one side?
About a minute and a half. I'll show you how brown it gets.
Whenever I start the pancetta, I add a lot of crushed red pepper. And I like it spicy. And just keep tossing the pancetta so that it all gets cooked properly and thoroughly. A lot of people, when they eat carbonara, they're worried about salmonella because the eggs actually don't go over the heat. But the bacon grease, the pancetta grease, actually ends up cooking the egg all the way through. And if the eggs are fresh, we shouldn't worry anyways.
All right, to interrupt you for 1 second, I don't know if the camera can see this. I don't know if they really can, but I'm going to try it. That's about how brown you want it. Just so it gets a little brown on one side. And we're going to brown the other side real quick. That was about a minute. Once the pan's hot, it takes about a minute, like I said. And why don't you tell them what we did with the pasta? We add a little oil so it wouldn't stick, but
yeah. There's 2 pounds of pasta in that pot, so it's all pretty tight. So when the water started to boil, we added salt to help it separate and oil to help it separate. We added oil because there's oil in the bacon. And as you said,
you only want to put oil when you're cooking pasta into the pasta when you're using an oil-based dish. If you were making spaghetti and sauce, you don't want to ever add oil into the pasta because the sauce will repel. The oil will repel the sauce.
And also we use spaghetti and not angel hair or spaghettini, which are the smaller forms of spaghetti. If you use the smaller forms, the egg and the spaghetti just kind of coagulate into a big mass, and it doesn't toss right with the bacon.
Okay, so I took those out. I'm going to finish cooking these other ones here, just to get them brown. And like I said, at the end, during our break, when we take one, I'm going to put them into a roasting pan, throw them in the oven with sauce. And at the end of it, when we come back from our break, I'll show you what the finished product is going to look like. So right now, Dan's just going to brown those up. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to show you how he integrates pancetta over the linguine and mixes it all up. So we'll be right back. Hello, welcome back. What we're going to do now is construct the carbonara. But first I want to show you what I did with the veal, if you can see it on either camera. Took all the cutlets out, put some sauce on them, and put some cheese on them. And we preheated the oven, and we're going to throw those in right now, and I'll show you what they look like when they're done. So we'll throw those in. And Danny is going to tell you what's going on with the pasta.
Well, we strain the pasta. We put in a little bit of the bacon grease on the bottom. Brian's going to keep tossing the pasta so that the bacon grease gets all the way around. I'm going to pour in the rest. Normally, you put the pasta in the pan with the bacon grease.
Probably when you're using a pound.
Yeah, we're using 2 pounds also. Oh, yummy. And Brian will keep tossing that so that the spaghetti noodles get coated with the grease, the hot grease. In this pan, I have 8 eggs cracked. I use about 4 eggs to a pound of pasta. I'm just going to beat it, make it like an omelet mixture. Throw in a little bit of light cream. And a ton of black pepper. I like to use the fresh crushed black pepper.
Yeah, that's better.
I'm not really sure the measurement of it. I just kind of coat the top so that there's an even tint to the egg with that. Kind of makes the egg look a little bit gray.
Ooh,
but that's good.
lost a little there, Danny.
That's all right. It all tastes good. Next, I'll coat the top with some parsley.
All right.
And then the key ingredient is Romano cheese. Doesn't taste as good when you use Parmesan. And it's good to get the Romano that is like ground like a powder. It melts easier. I don't know what a little bit of blackness is doing in there, but lucky I caught it. I put in about, I'm not quite sure how much I put in. I usually go by look and texture. And I put it so it almost becomes like a little bit of a dough almost. How's the pasta?
I get that pretty much sifted. I mean, you're better at it than I am, but I got it pretty coated.
Are the noodles hot? They feel pretty hot?
Yeah, it's still hot. I took it up. You want to take it off the burner when you do this, right? Obviously.
Yeah, but if it's not hot enough, you can just throw it on low. And just toss it
It's still very hot. It's steaming.
Okay. I'm going to put in a little bit more of the cheese. The mixture seems a little too loose. And we can always add cheese to thicken it if the egg's too loose. Okay. You ready? Or do you want to check on your veal?
No, my veal is pretty good.
Okay. How's it look?
Still electric stove. Still takes time. You have to add it in there.
Yep. This is the moment of truth. There we go.
Yeah, you can stir it up because you're good at it. While Danny's doing that, I'm going to tell a little story since the chief storyteller's not here, my father. He's probably at home watching this on the tube. But with the holiday season coming up, it's one of my favorite times coming from a big family and being around all the nieces and nephews and the family and brothers and sisters. Every time we cook, it reminds me of what we do for Christmas. We have raviolis that my grandmother once started that my father always comments on my grandmother, his mother. She started cooking raviolis for us ever since I can remember when we had Christmas. And as she got older, we incorporated each family member to start to doing a piece of it, as long as my father and my parents. And each Christmas, it's a tradition that we make at least about 300 homemade raviolis all by hand.
Wow, what do you stuff them with?
Stuff them with ricotta cheese, spinach, and a little bit of meat. Romano cheese. We hand make all the dough, and we make them all by hand. I just wanted to comment on that. I really enjoy the Christmas time with the family, and I enjoy cooking with friends and family, and just cooking in general. And the thing with Christmas is that it comes so quickly and it goes by so fast. So the thing I try to do during the Christmas days is just to sit back and say thanks for all that we have, and just spending time with the nieces and nephews, because it goes by so quick. So when you get that opportunity to be alone with a family member or whoever, just live the day, because it goes by so quick.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I enjoy doing.
You think they'd mind if I was in Iarussi that day? If
No.
I made some raviolis?
No,
As they come by and...
as long as you can eat, you're all set. And I've seen you eat before. Danny can probably eat triple what I can, and by looking at us,
I'm a
I'm
skinny
a little,
boy.
I'm a little heavier than him. But he can eat pretty well,
This is
which
pretty.
is not a bad thing because he can stay thin. So,
Yeah.
so how's it coming, Dan?
It's coming good. It's a nice, even, creamy texture.
Yeah, it looks pretty even, coated.
And I'd say it's done. We can let it sit, and depending on how creamy you like it, if you like it less creamy, you can just add more cheese.
You could probably use less eggs if you really wanted to, right?
Yeah,
Less cream.
I used less eggs than usual. Sometimes I use 5 eggs to a pound. This time I used 4. Actually, I like it better with just 4. But when you're tossing it, you got to get all the way to the bottom. And just
Yeah,
keep
and it's a
tossing
lot
it.
harder with 2 pounds, like we said.
You can tell you're over tossing it and over cooking it when your egg starts to dry out. It becomes like a scrambled egg. That's when
You don't want it to get to that
don't
point.
want no.
You still want it to be a little creamy.
So we're starting to get a little bit of the scrambledness, which is fine. So we'll take it
Let me
off.
just check the veal here.
I had to wash my hands.
Alrighty, veal will take 1 more minute. So, you got any stories, Dan?
No, I don't.
Come on.
Stories?
Yeah, when you're growing up, you must have some about Pizza Jane.
Oh, Pizza Jane. That's my mother's famous
Yeah.
recipe. She learned it from my father's Italian aunts. But she's all Irish, but she makes it.
What is it?
It's actually a layer of dough, and then a layer of pastrami, a layer of Munster. You beat the pastrami with egg, and cover the Munster. Put another layer of dough on top of that, and seal the whole thing with olive oil. Bake it.
But you put another
about
piece
an
of dough, or is it just cheese on top?
It goes like dough, pastrami, cheese, dough,
Oh, okay. So it's like
and you seal the whole edge.
it's almost like a pie, and then you just
Yeah.
bake it.
Your dad loves it.
Yeah, actually, we got to have Danny's mother come on eventually. We're trying to get her on. She's a little bashful, and when she sees her son on TV, she'll be on making some Pizza Jane. Get Suzanne on here.
Yeah.
All right, I think my veal's done. Could cook it a little more just to get it brown, but I'm going to borrow one of those pot holders from you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Oh,
Cheese is melted. You
my
can
darling, man.
You could
Looks good.
you could cook it a little more to get it brown, but that you don't want to overcook the veal. Like I said, it's been in there about 5 minutes. So I would say that's done, and it's going to be perfect.
So you put marinara, right? And then cheese.
Yeah,
shrimp,
any kind of
mozzarella.
sauce you can use, whatever you have bouncing around the fridge. If you make your own, or if you really have to use jarred, because I know with the fast pace of people working and kids, you can just throw that on there. But it's all up to you, depending on the taste and any type of cheese you want to put on there. We put mozzarella on, but you can put a blend on. I actually like Munster on mine too. So, but I guess that's the completed show. So I'd like to thank Dan for coming on the show. He's
Thank you,
welcome
Brian.
anytime. I'd like to get his mom on here to cook some pizza Jane so you guys can see what that is, and I'd like to see it myself because I haven't tried it. So I'd like to wish happy holidays to all the viewers watching from Channel 8, and we'll see you next time on Soup to Nuts.
It's one of the things the Historical Society has inherited were some portraits of some of the early people in town. Mostly they were all painted probably in the 1840s, about the time of the incorporation of the town. And one such couple this is Abigail Shepherd and her husband, Major Calvin Shepherd. Now they were also mill people. In that they came to town from Natick in about in the 1820s, also similar to when James Jackson came. And Calvin Shepherd they set up a mill called Shepherd's Paper Mill, and they manufactured paper from rags. And this was down near the corner of Fountain Street and Union Street. And there's nothing that remains of it today, because like everything else, it went with the reservoir system. And one of the things, they had several sons. One of their sons married one of James Jackson's daughter, and he was a captain in the Civil War, and he was wounded at Fredericksburg. That was their son, Alan. Their son, Calvin Jr., was one of the first selectmen in the town of Ashland. And another son, Isaac Shepherd, we have this commemorative piece here. He was he rose to the rank of Brigadier General in the Civil War, and he was also the consul at Hankow in China. And this is a commemorative that was made in China for him and is signed by all of the members of the consulate at that time. He died, I don't know what the date is, he died by 1889, so it's sometime between Civil War, and as you can see, his Brigadier General symbol is at the top of the piece. Except I call it a patriotic piece. It was probably done at the time of the centennial in 1876, because a lot of things were done at that time. And it's called stump work, and it's embroidered on silk, and then it is stuffed to make it like three-dimensional. If you get close enough, you can see that it is. It's very fragile. This looks like a piano, but it's really what's called a seraphim. And it's a wind-reeded type instrument. It's probably similar to an early organ. It's played like a piano with keys, but it has a large bellows underneath it, which is pumped by foot pedals. It came from New Sharon, Maine, and it was invented about 1830, and it does not work, unfortunately. The portraits on the wall in this room are the Grout family. We have Eleanor Dadman Grout, who was the second wife of Elias Sr., and her son Elias Jr. and his wife Harriet Fisk Grout. Now, these people lived in what was part of the town of Framingham, and they're buried in the there's an old burying ground on Winthrop Street in Framingham, and I think this Grout family is buried there. Elias Grout was one of the first selectmen in town, also as Calvin Shepherd Jr. was, that we saw in the other room. And he was also a cotton broker. As you remember, we did have a cotton mill in town, and so he sold cotton. And he, in general, they were a very important family, early family in town. These wooden cases were made by Eli Snyder, and it's this Ashland pattern and model works on Front Street, Ashland. And he apparently made all these wooden cases for the early Warren Clock Company and Telecron clocks. And that's a person that I would be interested in doing a little research on. I haven't, to find out a little more about him. But if you take a look at all these early clocks, you can see that the cases are that they're handmade. There's just difference between that and machine-made. That's a tin peddler. His name was Francis Chickering, and he lived on Esty Street in Ashland, in the house that kind of sits back. That picture was taken down by Dennison in Framingham, but in, I think, around 1900. But a tin peddler was somebody who did just what he's doing. He had a wagon load of pots and pans and brooms and baskets and so forth, and he went out door to door. In those days, housewives were home all day. They didn't get to go out shopping. And he came by, and if you needed something, you bought it from him. And tin peddling was very popular in the late 1800s. Here's some pieces of a lampshade like this. And then these pieces, those edge pieces, are similar to that platter. And
Were
then
they dug up around here?
Yeah, well, when we had the back porch, when we took up the porch floor, they dug in the dirt down, underneath to see if there was anything that, because that would probably have been outside in the original house. It was, and so we did a little thing, and then some of the nails that came out of the woodwork as we were, doing the renovations. So. That's something that was given to us just in the last couple of years, was this framed photograph of all of the men who were killed in the Civil War from Ashland. And I know somebody, I had corresponded with someone from the Middle West once who had two, something like great-great-uncles who were killed, and both of their pictures are in this group. And so it's probably the only record we have of these people. This is an original quilt that's all hand sewn. It's made to fit the bed. The corners fit right around the bed. And this is the bedspread itself, which is an early, very interesting print. It is a rope bed. It should have a feather mattress on top of it, which it doesn't have. If you can see, the ropes are strung crisscross to hold the bed together. There's no glue or anything in this bed. It's all cut to fit. If you take the ropes out, you can you'll have the headboard, you'll have the two posts on the foot, and you'll have 4 pieces of lumber, and you can just bundle it all up into a little package and move it, which is a lot better than present-day beds. A lot easier to move anyway. This is another early family in town, the Homer family. Most people know there's a Homer Avenue, and they lived at the corner of Homer Avenue and Union Street, where the Shell gasoline station is now. This is Sally Homer, who's one of the daughters of the family who never married, and it's her portrait. And this is a quilt that was made by her. It's never been used. It's like the material seems fresh as the day it was bought in it. And we have a picture of her father over on the other side here. This picture is in pretty tough shape, too. This is Michael Homer, her father, who was born here in Ashland, or what became Ashland, in 1779. His family came out here from Boston in 1776, and again were some of the very first settlers in town. And his picture shows the damage that we have to a lot of our items from having been in storage.